I would like to welcome everyone here to the Common Council's Special Projects Committee meeting of tonight. This is our second meeting for taxi cab fares, looking at taxi cab fares in the city, looking to see how we can balance business and ridership and come up with an equitable solution and fair solution to help our taxi cab businesses as well as our ridership in the city of Glens. So if we just go around the room because we have some new people here and I'm not sure if you guys know some of the players. It's been a while, so we'll start with myself and go this way. I'm Jim Clark, I'm Councilman of the 5th Ward.
Bob Curtis, City Clerk.
Karen Judd, City Attorney.
Jim Campanella, Councilman of Ward 1.
Bill Collins, Councilman of the 2nd Ward.
I'm Vince Cohen, one of the owners of Queensbury Taxi.
I'm Melanie Cohen, one of the owners of Queensbury Taxi.
Thank you guys for being with us. So we had a discussion 2 Tuesdays ago about opportunities to look at ways of balancing how we can accommodate you and trying to taxi cab companies and providing alternative revenue sources, as well as maybe reducing expenses, as well as looking at increasing fares a little bit to try to accommodate and get to where we need to be, as well as other legislative stuff like taking the fare structure out of the city code, so it's a less cumbersome to change the fare structure instead of doing public hearings and things like that. And so hopefully that would make it a little easier to address this, since the last time we addressed it was 5 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So those are some of the things. We also talked about looking at maybe reducing the amount of zones or getting rid of the zones altogether. We talked about doing a fare structure, changing things in the evening time, looking at whether or not we should increase the fare based on ridership. Certainly ridership is a little different in the evening hours than during the daytime hours. Again, we would look to you to try to give us some guidance on that, and what the typical ridership looks like and things on during the summertime and during obviously it's a little different between winter and summer and the tourism season and stuff like that. So we were thinking about like making like a season, offering things in that regard. So we've talked a little bit about a couple different structures, but we need some guidance or some thoughts from you on again I look at this as a situation where we need to try to figure out a sweet spot where the businesses can still be a business, a viable business, as well as our most vulnerable population, our seniors, and people on fixed incomes and things like that, have the ability to get where they need to get to in a fair, equitable manner outside of the mass transit system. Because let's be honest, it only goes in certain places, and jobs are not on Route 9 all the time, or the major thoroughfares. So, and the bus system doesn't run when they always need it to run. So that's the struggle we face. I know you've mentioned struggles you're facing with staffing and things like that, and we just need to try to come up with a solution that benefits everybody, and that's the goal. I don't think we're going to make everybody happy because that's just not reality, but we want to be fair, and we want to do the right thing. So
That's why we're here. We're hoping to make some change.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the question I have for you guys is, can you talk about like a typical fair, what a typical fair, typical day looks like for you guys? What, you know, how the structure is here compared when you go outside the city? You know, what is the rates, obviously different, things like that, you know? And, you know, talk a little bit about that because I haven't driven in a taxi.
I would love, I'd invite any one of you to come along. Alright, so.
Yeah,
would you like me to
please,
start?
yeah.
Okay, so I've been involved in the taxi business now about 13 years. I started off helping my brother with his business years ago. I learned the business by working with him, and from the start I felt that the city rates were very low. At that time it was like $3 and change for a ride. And gas had climbed up over $5 a gallon. And I watched my brother struggle being in business. I tried to help out as much as I could. I worked 100+ hours a week for free just to help him maintain his business. And then I got frustrated because the city hadn't changed their prices. He was trying to stick with the city code to stay, you know, compliant, and I felt even then that he was being overrun by inexpensive rides and the amount of work that goes into maintaining a vehicle on top of the fuel. So that was then. Melanie and I decided we were gonna do our own thing, and we opened up 8 years ago now. I immediately raised prices on all outside city rides. At the time,
None of the rates outside of the city are
regulated.
regulated in any
Sure.
way. So when you go to Queensberry or Hudson Falls, we can set our own rates for those.
Okay. Is that where you find like the so the question is someone calls you in the city to pick them up and take them outside the city, you can only, like, I live on the, you know, the west end, my job is over Walmart and, you know, on the east end.
So the city has no regulation over setting rates on.
So, but when you call me up, or I call you up and ask you to pick me up, do you charge me for the rate in the city until you get outside the city, or is it like I'm going to Queensberry and you can?
Well, I mean, the city has its zones, and then we're centered in the city, so we kind of said, all right, well, we're the center, so from here, we'll set our price to here, so, you know, say to like Burgoyne and Fort Edward, to Walmart Route 9, to West Mountain Road, to exit 17. Like we have like boundaries for our zones, and then it may be a little bit lesser the closer you come to the city, and then further out we charge more.
But you don't charge me for in
$4
the city
in the
line.
city. No, we charge whatever the rate is for you
Wherever
going from
you're
the
taking me.
west end to, if you're
Gotcha.
going out of the city, then we can,
Gotcha.
we charge what we feel
But if
is
I'm going in the
necessary.
city, you're constrained by the.
No, it's only in city to in city.
Yeah.
Network constraint.
Yeah.
And when somebody calls you up and says, I wanna go, you know, to Queensbury somewhere, before that, you tell them what the rate or what the charge is in the city, and then beyond that, so
No.
they know exact, no?
No, because
No.
they don't get charged city rates if they're going outside of the city, even if they're being picked up in Glens Falls. If we're bringing them to Hudson Falls, Queensbury, Lake George, we have to charge them accordingly to get from Glens Falls to Lake George. So that's where we set our rates in order to do that. We're limited when you
We have
guys.
a lot of travel time in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of travel time, so if our taxis are up in Lake George or out in Queensbury and someone calls for the city, it's hard to pull somebody from a fare that they could be making sitting at Walmart on Route 9 to come down to the city for a $3.75 run. It makes it almost impossible for our drivers to.
So, alright, so that's, okay, so that
So I got
clarifies.
I got one for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
If let's forget about Glens Falls for a moment. You're, sorry. So let's say, I'm in Fort Edward and I wanna go to Hudson Falls, or I wanna go to Queensbury, it doesn't matter. What is it that you use to determine my rate,
Mileage and time.
mileage and time? So with or you had a dispatcher, so do they give me that rate on the spot, or do they give me the rate, how does that go?
Yes. So a typical call comes in, hey, I need to get picked up at Pearl Street in Hudson Falls, and I'm going down to Fort Edward to Market 32.
Okay,
Okay, so sometimes they say, oh, how much is that?
yeah,
You know, and sometimes our phones are ringing off the hook.
right,
And so we're like, okay, we'll send one over, and we hang up. At some point, customers know what our rate is, and if they don't, they typically are asking.
mhm,
If we have a moment to have an extra 30 seconds for a conversation, we may say, okay, it's gonna be X amount of dollars, we'll send you your car.
but you have, if I call at noon, Monday through Saturday, to go to the same spot, is it the same rate, or do I
Yes.
pay different,
Same
different
price.
days?
Same rate,
Same
every
price.
day.
And so if I call late at night, though,
Same
it might
price.
be more, same
Same
price?
price.
Same price. The only time that price would change is if you had additional riders with you. Say you had
Okay.
3 people, or say you called and requested that same ride and said, I have a trunk full of groceries, can you please send me a van?
Gotcha.
You might upcharge it there because we can't put anybody else in the car, you know, we have to send a special vehicle for you.
So you said time, just, do you mean, you know how far it is from point A to point B, and how long it's gonna take you to get there, is that the kind of
How
time
long we're gonna
consideration?
get there, how long it takes for the customer to actually come out of their location.
Oh, so it
That's-
could be more?
That's always an issue. Every single ride it's an issue.
We have
Right.
a dispatch
Mhm.
system that we use that we can input our calls into, and it actually pushes it out to the driver, and it shows us on our end of the dispatch how long it's gonna take for that driver to get from where he is to that call, and how long it's gonna take from that call, once the customer comes out, to get to that next location. So we can see exactly on our inside how long it's gonna take.
Within reason.
And all of the mileage that it's gonna be.
So if
Lights
I,
and traffic
again,
always
noon,
is a factor.
noon on Monday, I call you and I say I wanna go to Hudson Falls, you tell me a rate, and it stays that rate, the driver doesn't figure out my rate, you guys or the dispatcher does, right?
Right.
Right, and, so if I'm more than 2 minutes getting out there, you might raise that rate, is that the way?
Well, we typically have a 5-minute leeway.
Fair
We'll
enough.
call you as soon as we get there, as soon as we'll anticipate our driver pulling up, and if the phones aren't ringing like crazy, we'll call you and say, hey, mister, your taxi's pulling up right now. And if you
Okay.
take an extra 10 minutes, you might not have a taxi when you get out there, but.
Does mileage, is mileage the only thing that counts, or is it, also different for town? So, again, if I'm going from Hudson Falls, and now I'm going 5 miles to Fort Edward, is that rate the same if I was going 5 miles in a different direction, say town Queensbury?
So the rates do change the further out you go.
Mhm. What
Recent,
if it's the same distance, I'm just saying different directions, that makes sense? I'm just wondering if there's, is it, again, if I'm in Hudson Falls, and I go 5 miles to Fort Edward, or then in Hudson Falls, I go 5 miles to Queensbury, is there a different rate?
yes. So it depends on, we have our own kind of zones for our area, for the valley is what I
Okay.
refer to.
Sure.
You know, Argyle to West Mountain, Lake George, down to, you know, Saratoga.
Mhm.
We've got different zones that we have already calculated the mileage and the time it takes to get there. For instance, you call from Bolton Landing,
Mhm.
okay? That's a $40 to $45 call just to get in the car. Because it's taken us all that time to get to you.
Yeah,
And then we also calculate where you're going and how many people are in your vehicle, so it could be more than that as well.
okay. But you know that, again, before you come pick me up, you're just saying
Yes.
to me, it's at least $45.
No, it is 45.
Right,
You
okay,
wanna go to Sagamore to somewhere else in Bolton Landing, it's $45.
gotcha. But it might be more if I wanted to go from Sagamore to, back to Glens Falls, it might be.
It's the same
60.
$45 because we've already calculated all that distance and travel in.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
So you get more value if you were coming from
Further
there to
down.
here, yeah.
So to speak, I guess
Yeah.
you'd get more value.
Yeah.
so, I think I understand from our first conversation, we had a pretty long conversation where we tried to understand the issue. We know that Glens Falls has a history, back in at least 50 years, where the city council set rates for for taxi cabs operating within the city, and they set up zones. And it's very, so I agree, the sound of $5 from anywhere in Glens Falls to anywhere else sounds extremely inexpensive. And so I can appreciate that, and that we may be pushing you or any taxi cab business out of the city. We also know that those guidelines were set up to help senior citizens and people of economic disadvantage from within the city. So we're hard pressed to cancel those or to raise those rates. We're stuck between a hard spot. So we understand that we may be putting you out of the Glens Falls business or that market.
We've left a
We've
couple of
left the city a
times,
few times in frustration.
Fair enough. And so we know that might be the possibility. And we also are aware of the needs of our folks, and we also are aware that your business, as well as every other taxi cab business, is under great pressure due to the new sharing, right? The Lyft and Uber, and fair enough, right?
We haven't even gotten into that yet.
Right. So, and there's very little we can do about that. It would be different if we could set, we discussed it in our meeting. If you listen to the minutes, you'll hear that we asked those questions, like, could we impose the same regulations that you now have on Uber and Lyft? Because that would be, and we realize that we can't regulate that.
Because that's through the state.
And so we're struggling. So what would the rate be? So Glens Falls is 5 miles square, and so you're coming to us, not just you, but other taxi cab companies too. I don't wish to say you, right?
No, I know,
I guess
I'm
in this-
leading the push on this.
Fair enough. So you've come to us, and we understand that you're saying this is too low. So can you give me, and if not now, could maybe you tell us after this meeting and report out to us so we can discuss it? What would a 5 mile trip, what are the different 5 miles trips that you would charge for me if I lived in Hudson Falls and I'm going 5 miles to Port Edward? Or if I lived in Queensbury and I was going towards Lake George, right?
Okay, so I'm not sure if the common council is aware that I protested the city's rules with this fair.
Yeah.
I, at the beginning of this year, after struggling through COVID, said I know what my expense is
Mhm.
to operate my business.
Yeah.
My minimum ride is $15. Whether you're in Glens Falls, you're in Hudson Falls, you're in Queensbury, my minimum ride is $15.
And what is a minimum ride? How far is?
So my $15 zone is from Glens Falls out is gonna be to Burgoyne and Fort Edward, Hudson Falls. That if you were looking at a map, you'd be able to see the circle of what I'm talking about.
Can
But
you share your zone with us? Your zone?
I mean, it just is what it is because I've chosen those. I don't have it written out.
Sure.
somewhere.
You don't have a map with,
I don't
like,
know.
okay, alright.
All my dispatch knows, we go by mileage, we go by,
So is it
Time.
$15 whether you go 3 miles or 10 miles? Or it's $15?
relatively. So if you're going from Fort Edward to Glens Falls or Glens Falls to Fort Edward, it's $15. Hudson Falls, this is what I'm charging right now, okay? Because I feel that I pushed my limits, obviously, with the city. They've charged me with the charge of operating without the city permit. Which I felt I had to do this in order to get this meeting, which I've been trying to do for 3 years. So my zone goes to Burgoyne. You can go as far as exit 17 for the same $15 from Glens Falls. You can go from South Glens Falls to Hudson Falls for the same $15. But if you're looking to go from, say, South Glens Falls to Queensbury, it's going to be more. So you're looking at $5 more, $10 more. The further up you're going to go towards the border of my $15 zones. So right now you can go to the outlets for $15. You can go all the way to West Mountain for $15. You can go one way anywhere pretty much, centered with the city as the center, for $15. You start crossing over from the city, outside the city, and then it's going to go up another $5, $10, $15, $20, depending on how far you go. To go to Lake George Village, it's $20. That might change a little bit because the mileage going up to Lake George is not a quick ride. You gotta go up over the mountain to get there.
So basically I need to work an hour to pay you to get, or I need to work 2 hours to pay you to get up and back from my job in Lake George, right?
If that's where you're working.
Comparing back would be the $30, correct?
Right.
The driver only makes 40% of that, and that's also the other problem with this too,
So-
is the drivers aren't making.
Who sets the and now is that the way it's done in every I wish we,
Every
I wish
The other
Ruth was
cab
here.
companies use similar scales. I am more expensive than everybody. I feel that we provide the best service. We provide the cleanest cars, the newest cars. I just bought 5 2021 cars.
You bought an
Less-
electric car, didn't you?
I have one electric car. I am going electric. I am going 100% electric. That's my goal. And it's gonna be a huge savings, and I'll tell you why. So, an idling car burns 1 gallon an hour. Okay? So, at that rate, you're looking at $60 a day. Just in an idling car, that's without travel time. So obviously, when you go places and you have heavier loads, you're gonna use more fuel. With the drivers earning 40% commission, which has been the standard in this area, you're looking at, for a driver to book $250 for a day, they're gonna earn $100 out of that. In order for us to provide them with, right now minimum wage rates have jumped. So at $100 earning with a $250 gross book, that's with me paying for fuel, repairs, dispatch, anything above what the, except for the driver's pay on that. The driver's gonna be earning $100 on a 12-hour shift. That puts them at about $8.33 an hour. And at the current city rate, the driver will have to do 62 rides in a 12-hour shift to just break that.
So how much driving is it? How much of your business is done within the city limits?
But we start and end everything in the city.
No, I mean, but how much off the city rates? How much of your, if I make $100 that day, out of that $100, what's the percentage of city, the revenue you're generating from the city?
It truly depends, because you could have 15, 20 city calls, and if that one driver gets stuck down in the city, they're gonna be hauling those calls all day long because they just can't get out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have somebody up in Lake George and they're bringing someone to Bolton, and then they grab one at the Sagamore, now they're going to Albany, that person or 2 people in the city, they could get 20 city calls a day, and they're complaining because they're not making any money. And our problem is the drivers aren't coming back to work because without money, they can't provide for their families. And without these rates being different, it's a hard situation for.
Your drivers, do they have like predominantly a zone that they work or start out at, or they
Everyone
start here?
starts here.
We start right from the office, and then you're gonna just go on the next call. And then when they get moving, like if somebody clears in Hudson Falls, and there might be a call coming up next in Hudson Falls, they're the ones who are gonna get that call. We try and work it so that we're not crisscrossing the zone.
The 3 zones in the city, does that help you, hurt you, does it impact you, does it not impact?
3 zones in the city are obsolete, honestly. You're talking about 3 blocks in the center of the city, which at rush hour, how long do you think it takes to get through that 3 blocks? That could take you up to 10 minutes.
Just getting down Broad Street.
And now imagine if you had to pick somebody up at Hannaford on Broad Street on a Friday, say 4 o'clock where the bank is busy, and they wanna go to Eastfield. And now they wanna stop at Stewart's at Broad Street on the Point because they need to get drinks. that ride's gonna take my driver 25 minutes to get through. He's only getting 40% of that $4.
So
And
do
in
you
your
charge
city-
extra for that stop and
Your
store?
city says we can only charge $1 for that stop, who's to say they're not in there for 8, 9, 10 minutes?
Right, they figure, well, we're only gonna be a couple minutes.
Right, but
Not to
there could
mention
be a
loading all
line.
the groceries in the vehicle, and now when we get to their location, we're gonna unload all their groceries.
Or whatever it might
And
be.
you don't have any
How much
senior
business-
discount rates either, correct?
We don't have what?
Senior discount rates?
I
Like the bus
personally
system?
discount certain seniors that I know of
Okay.
that take our rides, yes.
Is most of your business, you start in the city but you travel outside? Like what percentage is completely within the city of Glens
Yeah,
Falls?
that's what I'm.
10%.
Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying to
10%.
figure out
Sorry,
how we're.
so 10%.
We've reduced it a lot though. We
Yeah.
used to do a lot
I-
more here in the city.
I charge $15 now, so yes, I ran off a lot of those calls because it's not worth our time.
Well,
to
you
do
can't
that.
charge $15 going within the city.
Right, well, that's
Okay.
part of my protest.
Right, understood.
I'm just trying to stay in business.
Because you know that you cannot charge $15 to go from point A in the city to point B in the city.
When you started, Dan, were your runs into Bolton Landing, Lake George, Queensbury as much, or was it more confined to Glens Falls?
We were everywhere. I started
Yeah.
at Walmart Route 9. I would sit at Walmart Route 9 20 hours a day, and I would pick up customers that would be looking for rides, and I would bring them wherever they wanted to go. Hudson Falls, Fort Edward, Glens Falls, and then they called me back for their next ride. And I did that for many months. Myself, Melanie, I'd go home, sit on the couch, close my eyes, phone would ring, I'd get back up and go.
Do you get complaints from seniors or on what you're charging now, or the
I have
services,
gotten
or
complaints.
whatever?
So part of when I raise my prices, because I know what it costs me to stay in business. I know what my daily expense is down to the minute. And it is impossible to cater to Glens Falls with these rates. I want to service Glens Falls, and I want to be able to service everybody. I want to be able to grow my business, and we are growing our business. It took me my bold move in January to get us here today, okay? Because that's what initiated all of this right now.
And we don't wanna not work in the city, because we do wanna provide for the citizens here. But it's hard, like I said earlier, if we have cars that are up in, different areas of the town, we sometimes have to tell the customers that we just can't get them. Or it'll be an hour and a half wait because we can't take a car that's making money up in Queensbury or, by the mall or whatever to come down and do that small ride of that $3 or $4. So sometimes we'll just say, I'm sorry, we just can't get to you, and you'll have to use our other resources of Tri-County Kills or the bus.
One of the city rules are when somebody gets in a cab in the city, that customer can deny another customer in the city to be picked up. Now with COVID, we can't pick up anybody else. It's one customer, one destination, next customer, next destination. We used to be able to go from Platt Street over to Cooper Street, pick somebody else up, over to Prospect Street, pick somebody up, drop someone off at Warren Street, pick somebody else up on Warren Street, drop two of them off at Walmart, come back,
And it wasn't that bad because the driver, is stacking their
And
fares.
then we were stacking random people in cars. Okay, so I know I get complaints from customers that some cab companies are still doing that. Even though we just called the CDC.
Yeah, I just called Warren County, last Monday and they told us that we're not allowed to do that.
What do you think, honestly, is, we got a letter from the housing authority saying
Senior
600 seniors or whatever.
Down at the
depending
end
on
of the senior
town.
center too, we got one.
What is something that helps you out and also helps seniors and low income out and makes it a livable situation? Is there a solution or not?
Honestly, I don't know that there is because it is expensive to run a cab company. The city requires us to be in the city. Okay, so to have a location in the city,
And that's another
we've jumped
thing.
around a few different places. We've got our expenses about $1,500 a month with our rent, our insurance for our building, electric, our phones that we have to have in the city of Glens Falls based on your rules.
We have to have a man dispatch 24 hours a day. Right now with COVID, we're closing at midnight because we can't handle it. It would literally put us out of business to be in there those extra hours with just no calls coming in and we don't do ride share, we don't look on South Street. There's no people out looking for a fare anymore as per se in your city laws.
So with minimum wage at $12.50 right now, with 24-hour dispatch, you're looking at over $300 just for the dispatchers' wages, salaries, and taxes plus. That's $2,100 a week. That's $109,000 a year the city makes us have to spend on our
Because
business.
we have an app now that I could dispatch it all from my home. All in Queensbury, I can put it right on the computer, it goes to every one of my drivers, goes to every one of my customers, exactly like Uber and exactly like Lyft. And I can do that 100% from my home, but Glens Falls makes us have this office which ups our electricity, our insurance costs, you have to have insurance in the building. So the
So
rule of
one thing,
having
so
to
one
have
thing of
that.
releasing that law
Releasing that rule.
Would allow us to choose our location.
It would absolutely allow us to choose our relocation, and then the police wouldn't be harassing our drivers. Like, for instance, years ago when we had some issues, we moved over to South Glens Falls on Saratoga Road. And it wasn't even 2 days later, most of our drivers were getting pulled over and getting tickets because the police officers were harassing them because we didn't have our office in the city.
And it's known.
So again, remind me why, Bob or Karen, remind me why why we have licenses in the city of Glens Falls for taxi. It can't be, I mean, every city, I mean, Saratoga does it, I mean, everyone, Plattsburgh, I mean, there's a reason for this to be done.
I would like to.
Right, this goes back to 1922 when
It's an
cabs were
old,
set up.
it's an old law.
And it was an old law.
$60
And it hasn't
per
been
cab.
refined a whole lot, but that was it. I'm
Times have
guessing,
changed.
you know, buses came into the city, let somebody off down to the central business district. You needed a cab to go to the hotel, you needed a cab to go somewhere else. It hasn't changed a whole lot. We had taxi cab stands years ago. We don't have them anymore. But that was it, and with those regulations, if you want to have a cab in the city, this is what you do.
It would be I would love to know how many people, I don't know, benefiting is the word I wanna use, or not, but how many people are actually riding in Glens Falls? Actual people compared to every other, you know, it's like, how can you balance that out?
Right.
I mean, I could go through my year's worth of, transactions. I've got all my
There would be
logs for
some.
all the years that
We
we've
do
been in
have all of our
business.
logs, so for everything.
Here's another, but I wasn't quite sure how you answered my question. If we forget about Glens Falls for a moment, and I want to take a ride of 2 miles from one part of Hudson Falls to the other, is $15 your minimum?
That's my current rate, yes.
Okay.
I do offer a membership program, which is a discount program for customers who use my app only. And I charge a weekly fee of $15 and they save 50% on their rides.
And a lot of
And I've
us-
done this to just satisfy the working people that, since COVID, I started this in January, and I'm like, these guys, or even then, my older rates, everybody's going to work, and I calculate how much somebody spends a week with me to go to and from work, and when they're spending a lot of money, I'm like, I calculate how many hours they gotta work to pay us.
Right.
I'm not trying to generalize, but is it mostly younger people that use
No.
that app?
No,
No.
absolutely
No.
not. There's a lot of older people, we've helped them, set it up on their phones and whatever. The drivers will, when they get in the car and they offer them that membership, we have a nice medallion token that they receive. And the driver actually helps them set that up and shows them how to work it and shows them how to work their rides and
So
everything.
let me see if I get this straight. If I'm in Hudson Falls and I wanna go 3 miles outside Hudson Falls and I pay $15 for the app, and I get your app, and then I'm $7.50, is my right?
Yes.
And would that be if I went from 3 miles from Fort Edward to another place, Fort Edward as well?
Correct.
Queensbury?
Correct.
Okay.
And I geared that strictly towards the the working folks that take our cab every day. Those are the people I offered it to. I gave away, in January, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna give away 100 of these memberships to get it started. And within 7 days, I had given away 75 memberships. They signed up, I have a contract to sign. And
It's been
I
working really
had to
well.
stop. I had to stop because now with the 3 drivers I had, because COVID has run us ragged, I couldn't keep up anymore with all of those customers and my regulars, or my medical runs, or my corporate accounts, or, I mean, we work with all the different county agencies also.
So if it was on my phone, let's say I couldn't get online, I didn't know how to use my phone, and we add a way for senior citizens and those who are in need of the city of Glens Falls, and you were to offer that same kind of program for those that we're worried about here in the city of Glens Falls, and we found a way to pay for their membership, would you do that and allow it
Of course.
to be a phone call?
Absolutely, we could also
I
send you
have, I
up.
have seniors that call it in, but I also charge my regular members $3 if they're gonna call it in. Because my phones ring so much that I can't answer all the calls. And so when somebody chimes in on the computer, it chimes in the call, and part of my rule is they have to book their call an hour in advance because it takes time to line up calls.
Yeah.
And in order for them to get that savings, I can click 2 clicks of a button, the call is sent. I don't have to make a phone call, driver doesn't have to call me, driver knows where he's going.
And then the customer can see on their end, just like the Ubers and the Lyfts, where they can see where their driver is and how long it's gonna take, who their driver is, a photo of their driver,
And what
driver's
car they're
phone number,
driving.
the car they'll be looking for. So it's,
Be a way for us to figure out your question, Jim, how many people from Glens Falls?
Yeah, the other question I had is, you know, what's your ride, you know, do you see, you know, from the seniors and, you know, working family standpoint, where do you see those riders? Do you see them mostly during early morning and in the evening time? Where do you see them? Do you see them during the day, or is it like, does it vary? Like, we're talking about,
your average worker rides, I mean, the mornings are very busy. They start at 5 a.m., people are going to Albany airports, the train stations, they're going all over. We have a bunch of different customers they put time calls in for the morning. So
it's regular customers
yes.
going to work or going and,
The full price paying customers and the app customers. So after I did the 75 free memberships, I said, I gotta stop. And I said, my plan was to charge for the membership to try and cover the dispatch side of. You know, it's not much. It's $15 a week. They're saving tremendous amounts of money because those people who are taking those rides go daily. They go to work. From the West End, they go to Angio over here in Tech Park. They're going to Dunkin' Donuts. They're going to Wendy's or all the mills. You know, I've got customers going all over the place, and they're putting their calls in on the app. It's very efficient. Click, click. Driver knows where he's going. Click, click. No phone calls. I don't know if you've sat in front of 8 ringing phones for 12, 15 hours straight, but it gets a little frustrating. It's very frustrating. And
But those people are happy and they want to.
yeah, they want to give you
Keep that
their
in
money.
mind. These people
So
don't.
half of the phone calls are a waste of time because they're saying, "Where's my cab? Where's my cab? Where's my cab?"
So if you were able to operate outside of the city, you know, or anywhere, like you say, you can work from your home,
Mhm.
how is that gonna help the people in the city? Is that gonna help the people with the call? You're not gonna be telling them, oh, it's gonna be an hour and a half before I get to you?
It wouldn't
Is that gonna make any difference
It
at all?
wouldn't
You're
affect
gonna
their-
save money by not being in the city,
Absolutely.
but how's it gonna help our residents in the city?
How's it gonna help them?
Yeah,
I
not
mean-
gonna be waiting as long for
That's
cab or
that's no guarantee.
no guarantee?
Some mornings at 9 a.m. I am booked completely until 6 p.m. Completely.
Right.
I might be able to squeeze 1 or 2 more customers in, but I'm sitting there telling people it's a 4-hour wait, it's a 5-hour wait, it's a 6, and they're flipping out because we can't service them.
But one thing to point on that, if we were able to work from our home office, we would be able to save a lot of money on like, you know, our building, our insurance, all of that stuff, where we might be able to swing things different ways to adjust our rates in the future, because we wouldn't have that so much overhead.
Right.
That $109,000 in dispatch just alone.
That's one dispatcher at $12.50 an hour.
And
Our
most of our
dispatchers make a lot more than
dispatchers, and that's another thing too, is right now we only have 2 dispatchers because nobody wants to come to work, so those 2 dispatchers are working 60 hours a week. So we're paying 20 hours of overtime a piece on both of those dispatchers right now, because we just don't have the employees.
Let's say that you did, theoretically, you did the dispatching outside of the city. 2 things that are done now that I think are very important. One is the possibility of vehicle inspections and the police department being able to look at records from an inspection standpoint.
And we did complain.
And the other is the taxi driver permits that go through the police department to know that somebody can drive a cab, does not have a record, everything's free and clear. Do you agree, or do you think that those 2 things should still be in place?
Absolutely, I think that those things should absolutely be in place. One, that helps us as our company, the driver has to be screened by the police officer to know if they're a sex offender or a pedophile or anything like that.
As long as they're actually doing the job.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if any of you have seen the computer that the police department downstairs is using, but it's still a green screen.
And sometimes they'll push somebody through and say, yeah, they're good to go,
Just 'cause
and then
they know
3 days
or know
later, they'll know that they're on the road, and then they'll give them a ticket and pull them off the road and say, oh no, you had this charge or that charge, and the chief told me to pull you. So it's like, yes, that's a great program, because it does help screen, and I don't have any problems with the inspections as well. We're all done by Warren Tire. Warren Tire on Lafayette Street does all of our services for all of our cars. So if there's ever anything wrong, the driver points that out, it immediately goes to Warren Tire. They get us in and out within an hour or 2.
But that is part of the responsibility of a municipality. If somebody was to say, well, geez, you know, you didn't inspect the vehicles, you didn't check on the drivers, and something happened.
We don't have a problem
Guess
with
who
that.
owns the liability?
We don't
Right.
However, it is flawed in the city of Glens Falls.
Yeah.
Because the cab inspections are only done at midnight,
Yeah, that's not really
3
fair.
times a year.
They should do them at 3 p.m. on a Monday,
Well-
regardless if it's announced or not announced. It shouldn't be done at midnight. We've been closing.
There should be a better coordinated way to do it, maybe, like
Which is
the
a
driver
possibility
comes
to
to
do.
the police station
Yeah.
at their convenience to be able to do it, because we've had officers say, where's that cab? Oh, I'm sorry, but
We're working.
we got customers in the car, I got a line of people waiting for cars. I'm not gonna bring a car 40 minutes out of the way to come here for a 2-minute inspection that,
And they pulled it last time on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock, and we were just totally thrown by that, and we're like, it's busy. We've got 3 drivers out there, and they're up in Lake George. Like, we don't want to not be compliant, because we absolutely want to be
How many
compliant.
cabs do you have?
Right now we have 8 on the road, so absolutely.
What do you usually typically have?
we are back to full capacity of 8.
Yeah.
Really?
We've gotten up to 15 cars. We were, right before COVID, we had 10 cars on the road. I had just purchased 5 more cars and got them prepped to go on the road. We were coming into the spring season. I was anticipating a very busy summer, and we were growing. Our phones were, even then, we couldn't keep up with the volume of calls coming in. And the only way I've been able to maintain the new drivers that I have and some of the drivers that stuck it out was the fact that I raised my rates, and now they're making money.
So who sets the percentage of what they make? Is it you that sets
Yes,
you?
and I went off of a standard that was in the area for years.
That everybody's always gone.
I have a few drivers that make an hourly wage. I have the large portion of them are 40% commission. And the only reason I have an hourly driver is because that driver is also a dispatcher who goes and picks up these little calls around town that, you know, my other drivers, they don't wanna do it. And I wanna get these people picked up, and so we're trying.
So one thing we could do at our next meeting is we could look at the regulations and see if there's some changes we could make that make it more reasonable to today's standards. We could look at those things. Another thing we could do is come back to you and the other taxi cab companies and ask for a Glens Falls membership program, like similar to the program that you have with your app. Meaning there's how often do you charge them to use your app?
It's a weekly fee I charge.
A weekly fee. So that you charge them 15 and then you charge them $7.50 for the ride. So
Some people go farther out, and so it would be a $30.
$7.50 is the minimum if it was just a mileage, right? And that's all I'm concerned with. So as far as you're charging people $15 who want to go from Glens Falls to Queensbury, it's none of my business. It's not something that's covered under our current laws and our current situation. They want to go from Glens Falls to Fort Edward, and you want to charge them $15. That's none of my business, none of my concern. But what we'd like to do is create some sort of membership program and see if this would work for you and the other companies, where there's a membership fee that are for people in Glens Falls who are regularly transporting from one part of Glens Falls to the other, that we could somehow pull some money aside that would help pay for their membership fee, and then they pay $7.50 a ride from one part of Glens Falls to the other. Again, anytime they want something more, they want to go to Queensbury for the day or Lake George, and you're going to charge them what you need to charge them. They're going to.
But if they're a member, they get half off. That's just how we work it.
So even if they use it in the city, they could also use it outside of the city as
Right.
well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all just a theory. I'm not committing to anything
Sure.
because I don't have any money to pay for this membership, so it's a dream. But if there was a way that we could do that, and we could get the people that are regularly using your cab company and the other cab companies, and we find a way to get them a special rate and help them to get a membership fee so they can get where they need to from one part of Glens Falls to the other, we might have a solution that's bearable.
And we have to also keep in mind, minimum wage is going up to $15 an hour. So I have to keep that into consideration with hiring new drivers coming forward. And now I have to compete with the fast food joints that are offering even more money.
Well, I gotta tell you, I appreciate that you're in a bind and that your industry is changing and that you're gonna need to raise your rates as you do. But as a councilman of the city of Glens Falls, whose concern is only the senior citizens and the struggling people in Glens Falls, I really don't care. You may be out of business in Glens Falls, and if that happens, I do not like that. I want Glens Falls to be business friendly, taxi cab business friendly. But you may be, with rising tech rates, you might be out of luck. And if so, then that's just the case. I gotta be honest, those concerns I cannot consider.
Sure.
I just can't.
Sure.
So I appreciate it, and I'm glad that I didn't know that you were charging $15 from one part of Glens Falls to the next, because I'd be making a motion right now to expel your company from the city. Okay, so I'm glad I didn't know that, and that we're having this conversation. You didn't force this meeting because of your protest. You forced this meeting, or you didn't force this meeting. Jim Clark listened to you as a person who was, and so I just want you to know that. You don't hold any leverage.
I'm only here to try and.
We can't make this work. We're
Absolutely.
going to dismiss your company from the city, and we don't want to do that. That's why we're here. I just want to be straight up front. Fair enough?
And that's why I'm here, because I want to work with the city.
Fair enough.
And I've only been trying to get this going for years.
All right, so.
I wish the other two cab
I
companies.
do too.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what Tom's situation is. He came to me last week and
He's
said he was
very
closing.
sick. He's
Oh,
very
okay.
sick.
He
He
said
had a
that-
major heart attack dispatching.
So if we can come up with a membership program that can cover our folks, then we could reach out to them and hopefully get them to come to a meeting, and if they can't, we go to them.
What if the council eliminated the requirement that you have an office in the city? Would that be a big help? You'd
That
still
was
have to
really-
have a license or a medallion. I was just looking at the city of Saratoga Springs on their code. They don't require you to have an office in their city.
Correct,
But they require you to have the medallion, the hack, and all that.
correct. And also,
Would that be a big savings to you?
Well, what'd you say it was, you said it was, how much was it to,
$109,000 in dispatch.
that's at $12.50. I
I'm
promise
not
you.
talking about the
Well,
dispatch, I'm
we
talking
talked
about
This, the
you
rent.
rent a space.
Correct.
was that $1,500?
$1,500 a month
A
is
month.
my
So you could get,
office expense.
so let's say the common council decided to revise the code and say that taxi cabs do not have to have an office within the city. That would save you $1,500 a month.
That's a step in the right direction.
I mean, that's, you know.
I mean, it allows
it
us
might
to
also-
choose where we
It
want to
might
be.
also bring more business, more
Well, it
taxi
would
companies.
also-
It's $18,000.
And I'm sure Vance can back me up on this, force us, the city, to go after cabs from every other place that come in here.
I've been bringing that
Try.
to their attention for years, and
We-
nobody,
we
I
have
literally
practice.
have to follow around,
And
call
that's why I
and
said
report,
we
and
need
that's
to
not
have
what
a
I'm about.
separate meeting, because we need to look at that, that's
Right.
exactly what I was thinking about. That and the inspection and formalizing those so that we can work with businesses.
And I was just looking at the fare schedule for Saratoga, not that we have to copy Saratoga, I like to look at other municipalities. The first half mile is $4, each additional mile is 20 cents. Waiting time is 30 cents for, I forget what it was, each additional passenger $1. They charge a surcharge if you operate from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. of another $1. And legal holidays, you get an additional surcharge of $1 for working on a holiday.
And they get an increase every time the gas goes up.
I didn't see that in the
That's in
code,
there.
but-
And also, I'm trying to make our business sustainable. That's why I'm also going electric. Because I am trying to find ways to better operate my business. However, electric cars require high-speed charging units. So now I'm looking at high-speed charging unit in order to charge my vehicle within a timely period, which is 30 minutes is the fastest electric charger that's out there for vehicles. It's a $40,000 setup. So that's a huge amount of money.
Bill, what are our charging units? They're like a
12-hour triple charge.
Yeah, they're not.
They're not.
No, the
It's-
ones around here are
it's
probably
not
about
efficient
12
for
hours
us.
to get a full charge.
It's a good
Anywhere,
idea.
anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, depending on the car you've got.
Yeah, and they're meant for people to charge and stay down.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
they're not-
we
while
They're
you're
trying
at
to
work,
get the heck out of town, they're
We
meant
we
to
purposely
charge.
did that, we were hoping they would go for lunch while they were
Or
charging.
walk, do some
We
shopping
also,
and
the
things like
grant
that.
covered the regular charge, not
Yeah.
the fast charge, so it was, it all.
Yeah.
And it's a good idea, and I'll be honest with you, because all those charging units are put in the town, made me think about it more,
Yeah.
and I bought an electric car. It's a $40,000 car, it's not a cheap car.
No.
Right.
But it
You're
also has
saving on gas for sure.
2,000 parts, or 200 parts instead of 2,000, and it'll never break down. I mean, they literally
In theory,
don't
that's
break
what
down.
I'm really hoping
Well,
to
if you
solve.
find one break down, let me know right away,
So-
because then we're reading a lot about,
We've
we're
got two
investing in
yeah.
it too.
Engine repairs are huge for me,
Yeah.
transmissions are huge for me.
Yeah, right.
Just gas alone is my biggest expense, is fuel.
So why don't we have you come back next month and.
I really
we
would
have a
love
chance to look.
Ruth and,
I was hoping she was gonna be here, I've talked to her a few times.
yeah, and I chatted with her and I sent out the email to everybody and,
Does she have concerns such as Vance does?
I don't know if they're as, she has concerns, but, I'm not sure how, to the extent that Vance does. You know,
When we
we
had
talked
spoken-
about rate structure, I asked her about what would you think if we raised the rates in the evening time when it's a totally different, potentially totally different clientele, as opposed to during, daytime hours where it might be senior citizens.
And
Well,
again,
that's
Yeah.
what Karen sort of
Saratoga
mentioned in
Springs does
Saratoga,
it, they
yeah.
call it a surcharge from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m.
We
It's an
definitely want to
extra
consider
$1.
that. Remember, the concerns that we have, the reason that we don't lift this off completely and be like many
Yeah,
other
have at it.
communities, is the senior citizens and the financially strapped that are trying to get to.
And I'm more than happy to work a program for the seniors. I absolutely am. But I can't be restrained to earn an income. And I feel the city has definitely, you know, put a hindrance on us expanding sooner. But to be able to service the customers in the city, I just can't do it. And I've given up on servicing any of the bars in the city at night. It's not my interest anymore. I'm closing at midnight. I'm not doing bar close anymore. It's just it. It costs too much to run
So
the
now they
business
only have
for
one
those
option,
hours.
which is
The
room.
customer clientele at that hour is ruthless, and we don't want it. And so, you know, some of the bars that, and it's unfortunate because, you know, that's gonna push people to kind of drive.
We had a situation this past Saturday where we had some friends call on Saturday night, and it was midnight, we were closed, they could not get a ride. Our friend had just, you know, recently had a DWI, so he was trying to do the best, you know, and not drink and drive, that's what their plans were. And when they found out that we were closed, they couldn't get a hold of us, they tried Tri-County, they had no option with Tri-County, they tried an Uber, no Uber was available, they tried every single resource that they had, and they ended up having to walk to South Glens Falls from Peter's Pub. So there's definitely a need for taxis at that hour, but at the same time, the clientele is rough to deal with.
But if that's not some big thing for you, or as you said, it might have been in the past, you know, the late night bar run or whatever.
We used to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna open up in weekends to service Lake George area, because it's the tourist area, and we do a lot up in Lake George. And the fares are, you know, more reasonable in Lake George for our drivers to earn an income.
The Uber and Lyft with the taxis reminds me of the hotels and motels and the bed and breakfast.
Yes.
You know, it's like, there's this gradual sort of shift in a way, you know, which there is no answer
And
to.
different companies do charge different rates for every business. For instance, a cup of coffee, Dunkin' Donuts is $2.68 for a medium, Cumbies is only $1.
So
It's
if,
the customer's choice.
if
Right.
the regulation that we're talking about that currently exists, from Glens Falls was eliminated in the late nights, say after 7 p.m., would you open up your business more, even raise your prices so that you'd stay open later? Is that something you do? I'm not asking you to, I'm asking is it something you would do? Because that did come out in our first meeting. We were, again, if our concern is senior citizens and people who are financially struggling, we're not opposed to you charging more to somebody who needs a ride home from a bar at night. So,
Recreational, I understand, would be different than somebody who's looking to go to a doctor or
yeah,
to the
and
grocery
again,
store.
we're thinking no senior needs to get a ride from one bar to home at 2 a.m. So if we did, well.
Only Councilman Campanella. He's the exception. I'm just kidding.
We'll
just
give him a
kidding.
special pass.
The three zones, if they were eliminated, it wouldn't have any impact one way or the other, like a standard fee.
Most people in
for-
Glens Falls don't call and say, I'm from zone 1 and I wanna go to zone 2. They
I'm
don't even know
so
those.
confused.
Right,
I can't, that is as confusing to me as,
Yeah,
It's
most
been the
people-
most frustrating for me. for
Maybe
10
a
years.
65-year-old person who has studied the rules and laws and regulations may know what zone is zone, but
I mean,
95,
we're
I
I think
literally
you should do it per mile and per minute.
Right.
I
you
think
Or
it's
in the
so
city,
waste.
from in city to in city.
You can Google national rates, which is what I've always gone off of, just to see in what city versus what city. You can type in any address in the Glens Falls, you can Google it, city or taxi rates. You can just Google it, you punch in your pickup address, drop off address, and based on the national average, it will tell you how much it is.
Well, I like looking at like our local local cities that are more similar to us, like Mechanicville, Gloversville, Johnstown, you know, smaller populations that are cities that are, you know, have a similar structure as we do. I think those are.
So
do you know
Uber,
if those areas are regulated by taxes?
They are.
and Uber and Lyft have done a massive amount of damage to the cab industry.
They have.
It's like Airbnb.
My idol was
Airbnbs, you're right, it's the same thing.
My idol for the cab business was Capital Land. I saw Capital Land as a very large company. and I aspired to grow to be as big as Capital Inn. They're out of business.
Really?
They closed last year before the pandemic because they can't operate for the city prices. Albany has city prices. They can't operate their business with the city prices and have Uber and Lyft driving by them twice as much they're charging. And the customer's like, where's my Uber? Where's my Uber? Taxi's sitting right in front of you, but they're looking for their Uber to pay a surge rate because it's very busy right now.
Yeah.
And because it's very busy, we're just gonna charge more.
Yeah.
I had a friend went from Lake George to Fort Edward. A normal rate for us would have been about $27 at that time. Uber charged them $88 because it was bar close and everybody wanted
Yeah.
an Uber.
You know, I know they do that when SPAC gets out and the traffic and all that stuff.
Fleecing the customers.
And the
Fleecing.
problem, the biggest problem we have with that is they can just have regular insurance. They can put it on their Progressive, pay $130 a month, and they're making money. They're stealing our money. We have to have livery insurance, and our livery insurance could be,
It's $45.
it's about
$4,500.
$3,800 a month right now, is what
Well,
we're at.
no, New York State requires them, one, it's $100,000 application fee,
For what?
not to apply to be Lyft, a ride share.
That's Uber itself. That's the major
Right,
company.
that's what I'm saying, and 90,000 of which is refunded, and then there's an annual fee to New York State of $60,000. Ride-sharing companies will have to provide liability insurance of 1.25 million.
But the
That's
individual
Uber
That's,
itself.
I understand that.
the individual driver itself,
Not
Because
each car.
they're covered by Uber, they're under the umbrella of Uber.
right?
Your drivers are covered under your.
Under you, they're
Under
covered
our
under Uber,
insurance, right.
1.25 million,
But we're.
and they pay New York State $60,000 just to
So let's go
renew
with
their
New York
license.
State. So New York State pays us $8.80 to dispatch a call, and they pay us $1.93 a mile.
That's New
So
York
let's
State
start with that.
Medicaid rates. So,
That's New York State
you know, you
Medicaid.
could match Medicaid rates for the city rates, because that's New York State, and nobody can,
And they lowered that from $2.25 a mile
yeah, they,
because COVID. They lowered the prices on. They were paying us twice last year.
for cost of living or whatever, they.
And because we're in the city of Glens Falls, our insurance is 20% more than when we were using our Queensbury address. Our insurance went up 20%.
Raised it because
Because
that's from a
the
town.
volume of accidents in the city limits is greater than outside the city limits.
Not your accidents.
Not my accidents, accidents in general.
It's
Yeah,
just
it's
an
a rating.
an actuarial determining, just like my auto insurance is higher than someone in
Yeah,
somewhere else, right? I was just looking at Gloversville and I don't see their fares listed.
I went on several cities, I could not find fares for life.
because they're separated out
Yeah,
of
right, you're separated out, so I just can't
legislation,
find it.
so you've gotta call them.
So,
Right, so then how does the city, or how do the people know when
Yeah.
they're being charged properly, or
Well,
who's
because it
charging
says
them?
every driver of a taxi cab, oh no, not that one.
so I just happened to take a picture of a cab. I was out of town. They had their rates on the back of the car, like some cities do. It says it's $2.95 for the first 1/5 of a mile, 70 cents each 1/5 of a mile after that, 70 cents for each 50 seconds of waiting time, and each zone they charge per person that gets in the car. You're not going to take a bus anywhere and pay a group rate. You're not going to get on an airplane anywhere and pay a group rate. So when somebody calls for taxis, are we to charge per person? Are we to charge a little extra for each additional person and have a base rate? I mean, these are some good questions. I wouldn't mind charging per person because, we often get calls for 8, 10, 12 people to move at once.
In the city
Yeah.
law, there's something about kids are free in your guys' city code, which still takes up a spot in the car.
And everybody is required, even children are required to wear seatbelts, front and back seats.
Right.
So we could, and we do not overload, we cannot overload. I use the limo accident as my reference. May those people rest in peace. It was the most horrible thing I've ever, seen in this industry. And it gives me chills to even think about, you know, the cars being overloaded and cars being in that rough of shape. I prioritize bringing our cars in and getting them worked on at Warren Tire. Warren Tire's labor rate is $120 an hour. That's 30 city rides to just cover 1 hour
Can
without
you share
paying
that?
the driver.
Was,
That's not
that
in your
wasn't
notes, no.
in this.
These are some new notes.
Can you-
I'm throwing like other
Can you
things,
give
but
me
other
that?
expenses
That-
that
And the other
I
piece
come
of that
across
is
that
that Warren Tire is one.
cost me
of the
money to,
only,
you know,
Sure.
I have to earn that money in order to
within
pay
the
it.
city limits, so if you're trying to support, you know,
I really like the idea of helping the folks that need rides from one part of Glens Falls to the other, membership. Have them reach out to us, have them reach out to the cab company, let's start to track who they are and help them to get a lower rate, going from one side, part of Glens Falls to the other.
Do you work with the senior center at all? Do you work with like Family Action Center? Do you work with?
We work with
those-
WWAMH, Hudson Headwaters, Glens Falls Hospital,
The Weight House,
AIM Services, the Weight House.
Open Door,
Do you provide them a set rate, or how does that work?
they pay our rate.
They pay your rate.
And we bill them out. So they don't pay that way, you know.
Alright. Yeah, they're not, you're not gonna get comfortable. Doesn't matter how,
yeah, these
how you sit, you're not getting
they
comfortable.
look so good.
They weren't comfortable back when I was here, they aren't, I'm sure, they're not comfortable now.
Maybe about 100 years ago they were.
It's an antique.
It's
Back when they
antique.
set the cab rate. Anyway,
No, so I'll reach out to Ruth and, you know, like I said, I didn't hear back from anybody because I sort of wanted to get everyone's take on it, you know, thoughts and stuff, like, and have a good discussion because, again, some of us are working from a place of ignorance and
You don't,
it's not
I
helpful
don't
in
understand
solving the problem.
what our expenses are to operate the business, which you have to have a good understanding of what it costs to operate the business in order to price your product. Like the bars in town, they have an expense for their beer, and then they decide how many times that cost is gonna be what they sell that beer for. Same thing with us. We
A
have
lot
to
of
have,
cab companies have gone out of business.
Right.
and there's more going out of business. Unfortunately, I don't know what Tom's situation is, but he may not stay open. And so that's one
So
third
is
of
it
your
just
cab
Tom
company's
or is
gone.
it his wife as well?
His wife helps him,
Okay.
manage it, yeah,
But it's Tom.
yeah, he's the.
We got about 5 minutes, Jim, because we got a public hearing.
Alright, well, this was great. Thank you for.
Anything that I can, you know, help from questioning, or I'm more than happy to, you know, have you stop into the office, we'll show you our systems.
How it works. We just,
We're pretty efficient with what we do. However, the calls and
It's still
calls
business.
it's
Still-
we
fast.
still have to turn a profit.
Exactly.
Right, but we're only 10% of your whole entire business.
But it's regulated and it makes it a lot harder.
Understood.
Alright, well, we got our next year coming in, so.
Okay.
Did you say you're gonna have another meeting?
Yeah, we'll,
Public.
every Tuesday before the council meeting until we get something put in.
Next, in 2 weeks or
Yeah.
in a month?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
another meeting?
Thank you.
That would be efficient.
We'll keep plugging along until we get something on paper and I'll
What
try
time, Jim?
to, same time.
So what is
6
that
o'clock.
date?
June 8th,
And I'll reach out to Ruth
my
and,
birthday.
reach out to Ruth and see if we can't get her at the.
So June 8th at 6 PM is the next workshop?
Yep. And I'll put some thoughts down on paper and see if everyone is okay with, you know, looking at that and try to get some working done.
And if you have any questions, we're always-
But that would be great to have the dollar, you know, what,
You can use that whenever you want to.
yeah.
I mean, this is,
It's just
in no,
rough
no
No,
way
notes.
it's
to
just,
organize
it's
it.
it's just helpful to sort of get some
Rough
perspective.
notes of our thoughts.
There's no random order about it, I just
Thank
kind
you.
of threw it all on paper.
Okay, no, great, I
You're welcome
appreciate
to it.
it. No,